Let me tell you one of the greatest detective stories in all of human history. It's an incredible, multi-century saga of how we, as a species, defeated one of our absolute deadliest enemies. This is the story of how we conquered smallpox.
To really get a feel for the stakes here, we have to start with this number, 30%. If you got sick with smallpox, that was your chance of dying. For every 10 people infected, 3 of them were gone, usually within a couple of agonizing weeks. It was a terrifying roll of the dice every single time.
And this was an enemy we had lived with for a very, very long time. The villain of our story, the smallpox virus, it first showed up around 10,000 years ago in northeastern Africa. It just spread through the air, attacking its victims from the inside out, going after skin cells, bone marrow, the spleen. For thousands of years, we had absolutely no defense.
And this virus, well, it traveled with us. It basically hitched a ride on the currents of human history. We see the first major epidemics hitting during the Egypt-Hittite War way back in 1350 BC, and it just devastated that civilization. From there, it spread with the Arab world, with the Crusades, and then, catastrophically, it made its way to the Americas with European conquests, killing millions upon millions.
And, don't think this was just some problem from the ancient world. The virus was still a global nightmare in the modern era. This number, somewhere between 300 to 500 million, that's the estimated death toll in the 20th century alone. I mean, that's more than World War I and World War II combined. The scale is just staggering. You can see why people were so desperate for a solution.
But the fight back, that first little glimmer of hope, it started long before we had modern laboratories or anything like that. It actually began with a simple, but really profound observation.
People just noticed. They saw that if you were unlucky enough to get smallpox, but somehow lucky enough to actually survive it, you were safe. Forever. You'd never get it again. You were immune. And this simple fact was the very first critical clue in solving this whole massive puzzle.
And the first attempt to use that clue is, well, it's pretty remarkable. According to a text from way back in 1022 AD, a Buddhist nun in China would grind up the dried scabs from a smallpox survivor into a fine powder, and then, and you have to imagine this, she would blow that powder into the nostrils of healthy people. By the 1700s, the technique had evolved a bit to scratching material from a pustule right into a person's arm. It was a brave idea for sure, but man, was it risky.
So this procedure, which was called variolation, it came with a huge promise and a huge peril. The promise was, hey, it worked. People who were inoculated generally wouldn't get reinfected. But the peril was immense. Why? Because you were using the actual live, deadly smallpox virus. So up to 3% of people who went through with it would still die from the procedure. It was a terrifying gamble.
The next great leap forward, the real game changer, it didn't come from some sophisticated lab. Nope, it came from the English countryside, and from a source nobody would have ever expected. Cows.
This was the central problem, right? Variation was basically fighting the monster with a slightly weaker version of itself, but it was still the monster. The real breakthrough would be figuring out how to get that immunity without having to use the deadly virus at all.
And the answer came from folk wisdom. As a young apprentice out in the English countryside, a doctor named Edward Jenner overheard a dairymaid say this. She was just completely confident that because she'd already had cowpox, which is a pretty mild disease you can get from cows, she was totally immune to the horrors of smallpox. That one sentence sparked a revolutionary idea in Jenner's mind.
So, why was she right? What was going on here? Well, it turns out the smallpox and cowpox viruses are from the same family. Think of them like viral cousins. But here's the trick. When a virus like cowpox jumps to an unfamiliar host, like a human, it's way less dangerous. It was just strong enough to kick the body's immune system into gear, but weak enough that it wouldn't kill you. So, armed with this hypothesis, Jenner decided to do something that was both scientifically brilliant and, honestly, incredibly audacious. He decided he was going to run an experiment on a person. So in May of 1796, Jenner took some cowpox matter from a dairymaid named Sarah Nelmis, and he inoculated an 8-year-old boy, James Phipps. The boy got a mild fever, but he recovered really quickly. And then came the moment of truth. 2 months later, Jenner exposed the boy to the actual smallpox virus. And the result? Nothing. No disease developed. The protection was complete. And just like that, Jenner invented what we now call vaccination. The
key difference and the reason this was such a total game changer is that, unlike variolation, vaccination used a far less dangerous but related virus to provide immunity. It was a safe and effective way to finally conquer the monster.
Jenner's discovery didn't just save one boy. It gave humanity the ultimate weapon to literally eradicate the disease from the face of the earth. The end was finally in sight.
Now, the medical community was a little cautious at first, but Jenner's findings were just undeniable. Vaccination was gradually accepted, and by 1840, that old, risky method of variolation was officially prohibited in England. The new, safer standard had taken over.
After decades of massive, coordinated global vaccination campaigns, the incredible moment finally arrived. On May 8, 1980, the World Health Organization made the historic announcement. A disease that had killed 500 million people in the 20th century was officially gone, eradicated from the entire planet.
But Jenner wasn't the only hero here, not by a long shot. This victory really belongs to this long chain of brave and observant people. To that anonymous Buddhist nun in 11th century China, to the dairymaid who just understood her own immunity, to the brave gardener's son James Phipps, and of course to the country doctor who listened, who observed, and who dared to experiment.
This story just shows the incredible power of observation, collaboration, and scientific courage stretching across centuries. The eradication of smallpox is still one of humanity's single greatest achievements. It's a powerful reminder of what we're capable of when we work together, which really leaves us with one final, inspiring question. What great challenges will we conquer next?